Today is April 25th, 2014. I'm interviewing Stefan Gerum at the Torrington Town Hall in Torrington, Connecticut. Interviewer is Eileen Hurst from Central Connecticut State University. Stefan, would you state your full name, your date of birth, and the city and state in which you live?
Stefan Gerum, born in 1939, February 16th, in Omalica, Yugoslavia.
And what city and state do you live in now?
I live in Torrington. I lived here most of my life.
And what years did you serve?
And I went in August 1958, and I was released. I was stationed in Spain, and my wife gave birth to twins, and they died, and then they shipped me back early and released me in March of 52.
March
62,
of 62?
1962, sorry.
What branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Air Force,
And what was your highest rank?
Airman second class.
So Stefan, can you tell me, how did you get into the service? Did you enlist?
I enlisted, I went in right after high school. I had planned to go in because this is emotional to me.
Yeah, I understand.
Coming to America, to the United States, I wanted to serve. And
You came to the United States when you were how old?
I was 12, 1951.
So you immigrated to the United States
Yes.
when you were 12 years old. Did you speak English?
No, I had just started learning the English alphabet in Austria. I went to school there. And I came here and we stayed with host family in New York City. I went to school 125th Street in Riverside, which was an experience. Well, it's a cultural experience, you know. At that time, to that point, I'd only seen one African American man in Europe, and then coming here and immersed in. It was probably a good experience because you learn the cultural differences and you realize they're just people too, like we are. And
So when you graduated from high school in New York?
no, I graduated here in Torrington. We moved out of New York in 1952, briefly lived in Pennsylvania, and then came to Connecticut and worked. My mother worked in a house in West Hartford. From there, we moved to Torrington at the end of 1962.
And you've lived in Torrington ever since?
Yes, except for the time I was married and second marriage, and I lived in Windsor. We're just basically Torrington anyway, you know, it's outside Torrington.
So you graduated from Torrington High
Torrington
School?
High School, yes.
And you wanted to give back to the country that you had immigrated to? So you enlisted?
Yes.
Why did you choose the Air Force?
I was mesmerized by the planes bombing Belgrade and flying over, you know. So,
Because you had seen these firsthand when you were
Yes.
living in Yugoslavia?
yes.
Where did you go to enlist? Town hall right here, the same building?
Yes, well, no, it was in the old post office, the recruiting center at that time, on Church Street.
And once you enlisted, how long before you went for your induction and basic training?
I enlisted actually in my junior year in high school, and then the coaches and teachers talked me into finishing my high school diploma and get it, and then went in August. So I waited basically a year and went in.
Where did you go for basic training?
Lackland Air Force Base, Texas.
Can you tell me what that was like? How many months were you there?
I was there 3 months. The hardest part was getting adjusted to the heat, because August is one of the hottest months. But it was there again, it was a nice experience, cultural experience, meeting different ethnic groups, people. Like I was familiar with the Europeans, but I met Mexican Americans, Latinos we call them now, and a friend of mine was Japanese descent, and two close friends are African Americans. And from there I was reassigned to Omaha, Nebraska, SAC headquarters. And it was interesting duty. I met my first wife there. And
In Omaha? Now, at basic training in Lackland, what did you learn? Did you know what job you were going to have yet? Or was it
you didn't find that out till I was shipped out. They took a battery of tests, and it was basically orientating, marching, and getting accustomed to military life. And the way they worked it then is the test scores showed what ability you had. Mine were probably average. I had electrical and mechanical were in par with administrative, but they needed an administrative clerk, so I got shipped to Omaha as a clerk typist.
a clerk typist?
Right, which wasn't my strong field.
Was it?
No.
Could you type at all?
Yes, I could, but
How long were you at Omaha?
I shipped out in May, so shipped out in July or June of 1958, 59, sorry.
So, and how long did you stay there?
No, I take that back, it was 1960.
So
when
the
I shipped.
summer of 1960 is when
Right.
you went to Omaha?
Yes.
And how
From
long
there
were you
I went to
stationed?
Spain. I went to Omaha in November of 1958, right after basic training.
November of 58?
Right.
And how long did you stay in Omaha?
From November till June of 1960.
Oh, so, and were you a clerk typist the whole time
Yes.
that you were there?
Yep. I served with the 544th Reconnaissance Technical Group, which basically did the interpreted satellite photos that were, or airplane photos at that time of Russia. And,
Yeah, because we were in the Cold War at
Right,
that time.
right.
All right, so you were with the 544
Fourth.
Reconnaissance
technical group, right.
Technical Group. What were your specific duties? What did you do every day when you went to work?
Typing orders, letters, and supply requests and stuff like that.
And then in June of 1960, where did you?
I went to the Morón Air Force Base in Spain.
In Spain?
Right, it's about 40 miles outside Seville.
How long were you stationed in Spain?
Till the end of my service, which was in 1962, March.
What were your duties when you were in Spain?
There I served with the headquarters and base commander, and basically my duties were in the morning to get the teletype down, figure out what would be important for the commander to read, underline it, and then type orders for the day. That was...
Did you work right in headquarters?
Yes, right in the office.
Who was the commanding officer?
I don't remember.
Since now the Air Force has made you a type clerkist, did you come to like that work?
I enjoyed, you know, the interpretation of the rules. I had to, you know, we get the rules down from headquarters, and then you had to relay it to the rest of the next group of administrative clerks in the offices, and that was nice because probably the first time I was a public speaker, and it was a nervous experience, but it was good. You know.
How big a base did we have in Spain?
It was big. We had F-105s there and KC-135 tankers. And I would say we're probably talking about 5,000 to 10,000 people. I may be off on the figures, but it was big. Right.
So tell me, Stefan, what would a typical day be like for you from when you got up until you went to bed?
I'd get up, go to the mess hall, have chow as it was called, and then go to headquarters, look at what came in on the fax machine overnights and underline what seemed important as far as international events went, and pass it on to the commander. And then I started typing orders of people getting transferred or doing investigations on airplane crashes and stuff like that.
Was it a typical 9 to 5?
Basically, yes. Well, it was probably 8 to 4.
Oh, so.
Yeah.
When you were receiving the information, you had to be the one to decide what was important to highlight for the commander.
Yes.
Did you ever get any surprise faxes that you were saying, holy cow, this is going on in the world? Or were they
No,
pretty routine?
it's basically routine. Just at that time we were still in Libya too, at a base there, and you get information about that, and it was interesting to see, how the different bases reacted to it with the civilians and all that, and also you would hear about, what the Russians did at that time and moved on and stuff, which he had to know.
Wow. Were you ever in any combat units?
No.
While you were overseas, how did you stay in touch with your family?
I got married just before I left for overseas, and then I brought my wife over there.
Oh, so your wife...
And we lived off base and lived in Seville, Spain.
Did you speak Spanish?
I had 2 years of Spanish in high school, and it wasn't, I could get by, but I'm fluent in German, and I had to put that down, but they didn't send me to Germany.
That wouldn't make too much sense.
Yeah.
So you and your wife lived in Seville. So when you lived in Seville off base, were you then responsible for your own cooking and cleaning and shopping and all that?
Right. Yeah. It's just in part like you live now someplace, and that's what it was. And it was an hour commute to the base. They had a base Air Force bus. You had to be there, and that left 6 o'clock in the morning. And the neighbors always complained I made too much noise when I was running to catch the bus.
So what was living in Seville like? Did you feel like a tourist, or did you feel more like a resident?
Being from Europe, I was more like a resident, because I knew the cultures are different, and I respected their cultures for it, So it was very interesting living there and get along with the residents,
Now, your wife, coming from America, how was the adjustment for her? Here she's in a foreign country, and her husband's gone every day.
Well, she got in with the Air Force guys lived like in a section, and got familiar with the other wives there, and they had their own coffee clutches as you have here, and that's basically she got along good, And she was her grandfather was a Mexican, so it was she spoke a little Spanish too, so it was reasonable.
On your job, was it stressful?
Yes, in a sense, you had to get the orders out in time, and I'm not the fastest typer, so it never was.
You didn't get faster with time?
No, I just,
How did you handle the stress?
I played sports, and then the long ride back to the apartment, you know, was
You could decompress.
decompress, sleep, or
Since you had a regular daytime job, basically, that meant you were free on the weekends and in the evenings. What did you do for entertainment?
we went. Seville is a very beautiful town and a lot of things to see. So we toured the area, and in '61, my wife and I took a vacation and went to visit my relatives in Germany and Austria. And so we drove through Europe, and it was very nice, you know.
Did you have leave? Well, you must have gotten leave
Leave,
to go.
yes.
How long were you granted leave?
I took 3 weeks.
Wow.
I had to save them, so they let me go.
Do you recall any unusual events or any memorable things that happened while you were in Spain?
Oh, we were in an apartment which was probably about the 8th floor, and I'd just gone to bed and I heard this racket downstairs, and I was, what is going on, you know? I was ready to grab a bucket of water and throw over his head, but it was a person serenading his girlfriend on one of the floors below me, you know. It's a good thing my wife stopped me, you know.
Wow.
Would have been an international incident.
Well, I suppose in Spain, did they do that?
Yes, they did.
Serenading?
They
So that
did.
was probably a common thing for
Right,
them.
yeah. But first one I'd ran into. And the people were very friendly, and you know, like the landlord, New Year's, when New Year's came, he gave you a bottle of local champagne, you know. Well, not a bottle, it was a six-pack, a case almost, you know. It was very good. So, people were nice, you know, really. If you took the time to get to know them, they appreciated it. And
Do you recall any other memorable experiences from your time in Seville?
one of the things at that time, Franco was the dictator in Spain, and it was quite evident because wherever you went, you saw the LaGuardia with submachine guns, and they said when you're driving and you see one of the guys put his hand up, you better stop, because the next thing you saw in your mirror was the guns aimed at the car, and so you obeyed the traffic signs.
Well, that was probably somewhat unsettling to see officers all around with guns.
Not really. Growing up in Europe with the soldiers and the war, and you know, and
So you were somewhat used to that.
yes.
What's your opinion of your fellow airmen, the guys that you served with?
The majority of them were very conscientious and nice. I mean, like, in this society, you have a few slackers and, you know, troublemakers, if you want to call them, and so. But there's a very good camaraderie with all the guys. It was nice, you know.
What did you think of the officers?
Majority of them were very nice, you know. And I had one irritating experience with one. We had, they were from base housing. They were putting used furniture. It's a flea market, basically, right? And you had a chance to bid on, or they showed us the room and let us put our name down that you wanted that particular piece, and I put my name down, and some major come by, and I happened to look over and he's taking my name off, and I confronted him, and I was more or less told no certain terms, mind your own business, this is mine now.
Wow, that was in Spain?
Yes.
So that major got that piece of furniture?
Oh, yes.
Did you stay in touch with anybody? Did you make friendships while you were there?
Not from Spain. I mean, there's a few. We had a base basketball league, and we went. Most of the times we stayed there and played afterwards. But a lot of times we had to ride in from Seville in the evening and play. And one of the sergeants there. Rough on names. Anyway, his wife was from Germany, and he had served in Germany, and my wife, they became good friends, so we, the two of us, four of us associated a lot and had like neighbors, you know. It was very interesting.
Did you stay in touch after you left Spain?
No, we didn't.
Have you stayed in touch with anybody from your Air Force days?
I've seen two of my friends since then. They were both African Americans, the ones I met in Omaha. Fred Calder and Roger Archer. They were very...
So it was Fred Calder?
Yes.
C-A-L-D-E-R?
C-A-U-L-D-A.
And what's Roger's last name?
Archer.
Archer, A-R-C-H-E-R?
Right.
When was the last time you saw them? Have you seen them recently?
No, I saw Roger after I got back to Spain, about kids were big already then. The kids were 5 and 6. We went to visit her parents, and Roger happened to be getting restationed at Omaha, so we went out and had a evening with him and his wife and kids, and that was nice. And Fred was in the Boston area, and we talked and we wrote to each other, and we could never coordinate a time where he could come down, but we had invited him for Christmas and couldn't make it, you know, so. And that's probably the last time I saw him, all of them.
Wow. Now, you were stationed in Spain when you got an early discharge?
Yes.
And it was while you were in Spain that your wife became pregnant with the twins?
Right.
And you got the discharge because the twins both passed away?
Right. It's when they send you home on emergency leave overseas, and you have less than 6 months serving time left, they don't, cost-wise, it's not effective for them to send you back again.
Now, your wife gave birth in the United States or in Spain?
No, in Spain.
So you were both still over there?
Yes, we did.
And they gave you the early discharge, and
Right.
you returned to, where did you come, so once you got discharged, did you come back to Torrington?
Yes, I got discharged at Westover Air Force Base, Massachusetts, and I was commuting back and forth there till I got discharged. It was probably about, it was in the middle of January, end of January, and so probably a month later or so I got discharged there. It was in early March.
So what was your transition like to become a civilian now?
It was hectic. I had to look for a job and everything, and different story, because with the Air Force you knew what you were going to be doing. Now you had to be looking for a job and an apartment and everything. So.
What kind of job did you look for? Because your skills were in being a clerk typist.
Right. I looked for clerk, administrative, and then looked at my speed record, and then, so I went into I had, during high school, I worked part-time in the meat market, and so I went back into that for a while, and then eventually worked in a factory and stayed there the rest of my life, machinist.
So how long were you at the factory? Did you stay with the same factory all your career?
Well, I started in '67 working for Torn Corporation, and they went out of business in the early '80s. So then I moved around to Farmington and settled in Thomaston Tech Systems, where I spend the rest of my working days.
Did you ever use your clerk or typing skills again?
Yes, to an extent. When I was active in the establishment of youth soccer in Torrington, and so I did most of the newsletters and typing for them. So it's about the only time I use this.
So you can thank the Air Force for that training.
Yes.
So once you settled in Torrington, you stayed here now and you worked here, and you raised your family here. Did you, I know you said you were married a second time, did you have any other children?
I had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. And one lives in Torrington, one lives in Winston, and my oldest daughter lives in Oakway, New York.
How long did it take you, once you got discharged, how long did it take you to find a job and get settled?
Probably about 2 months.
Did you have family to support you in the meantime?
Yes, I lived with my mother.
Now, your mother had immigrated from Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Did she speak English?
No. Matter of fact, we decided we spoke very little German at home, and we both
German. Now, you grew up in Yugoslavia speaking
I'm
German?
I'm a national ethnic German. Okay, the town I lived in was part of Austria-Hungary before World War I, and after World War I it was ceded to Yugoslavia. So there was, I think, about 50-50% of the Germans and Yugoslavian, Croats, and Hungarians in that town. And it was like that almost all through Yugoslavia. And after the war, the Serbs took over, Tito took over, and all the ethnic Germans were put in concentration camp. When we stayed there, escaped in 1948 to Hungary and to Austria.
Your family escaped?
Just my mother and I.
Your mother's the only one in your
Yes.
family who escaped?
Right. Well, we were the only ones together. We were all separated all over. My aunts and uncle, they had, and grandparents, they were in different sections of the Yugoslavia, and they escaped at different times.
And then you all reunited in the United States?
No, just my mother and I came over, and her brother came over afterwards, and sister and her husband and daughter. We brought them over one by one. We had to make sure that they have a job and a place to live, and once we had established ourselves here, and we brought them over. My mother brought them over. I shouldn't say we. I was just a kid.
But it was you and your mother. Your mother was a pretty brave woman.
Yes.
Wow. The rest of your family was killed in concentration camps?
I lost an aunt. She was a couple of years older than me, and grandmother. They died of starvation.
Wow. You had a tough upbringing. Do you think because of your background that freedom means so much to you?
Yes.
So did you stay and take care of your mother for the rest of her life?
Basically, she was independent on her own. I mean, we lived in the area, saw her once or twice, and then as she got to the point where she couldn't do things by herself, she lived with my daughter in New York and stayed there for 5 years, and then she came back and lived in the Litchfield Woods nursing home there for a year, and then she died last July. She was 92.
Strong woman. Did you ever go to school on the GI Bill?
No, I didn't. I had started technical school in Hartford after I got back from the service, and stayed there for a year, and then my wife got pregnant again, so I made sure I had to get a decent job to support them.
Stefan, how would you say that your military experience influenced your thinking about war or your thinking about the military in general?
I realized that war is inevitable at times, but peace is necessary, and so therefore the service are necessary. But it was a good experience as far as growing up and maturing. Unfortunately, after I got out, Vietnam started, and that was a hectic time for young kids.
Well, Vietnam actually started right after you got
Yes,
out. So what were you thinking during the whole Vietnam? You had just gotten out when we started getting involved.
I was getting worried about getting recalled, but having served 4 years rather than joining the Army and having served 2 years, that never came up really. So.
Do you have any regrets? I hear you joined the Air Force because you were in love with the planes.
No,
you never got to work on the planes or fly
No,
them.
I do regret that, but probably would have been a different life and different job, so I definitely have a different job.
Have you joined any veterans organizations?
I joined the AMVETS organization here in Torrington.
And you're still a member now?
Yes.
What kinds of things do you do with AMVETS?
We do services for veterans. We had a stand down in the Army back in March, and where we collect clothing and stuff, and different veteran groups come, people come, and what they need, we give it to them. And we have fundraisers for supporting Christmas and holidays for veterans. Thanksgiving, we pass out turkeys and whole meals, and also with Roger Geiger, we support the Heroes on Wheels, which is basically collecting wheelchairs, crutches, and stuff like that, and refurbishing and giving them to veterans that do need it, or chair lifts that go up and down stairs. So it's it's a rewarding experience to give back.
Did you join any other veterans organizations?
No, I wasn't eligible to join the Veterans of Foreign War because I never served in the foreign war, and they're the ones that directed me to join the AMVETS, so that's what I did.
How did your military service affect your life?
It put structure in my life, really. As a kid, when you grow up with a single mom, you're more or less on your own. You do what you want and run around and stuff, and our Air Force, everything's structured, time, hurry up and wait. And so that gave me some sense of timetable and responsibilities to think about,
Now, you were your mother's only son.
Yes.
How did she feel about you leaving to join the Air Force?
Wasn't happy. I don't think any mother is.
How did you tell her? Did you just decide on your own and then tell her you had gone and done it? Or
Yes,
did you tell her before you went?
no, I had talked about it earlier, but then I finally did it and went in and
And signed up, and then you went home and told her?
right, and then the teachers and the coaches talked me into finishing my high school, which I'm glad I did. You know. And made her happy, but when I left her, she's still sad. But I wrote to her and talked on the phone maybe once a month or so.
Did you save any letters?
Probably not. By moving with 2 divorces, you throw a lot of paperwork away.
Well, thinking back on your time in the military, is there anything else that you can recall that you'd like to tell me about? Any other memorable experiences or anything that made an impact on you?
Well, yes, I had started to play volleyball in Torrington, and when I got to Offutt, they had a base league there, and then they selected from the players to make a base team, and we competed in the 2nd Air Force tournaments, and our team came in second, so we got to fly to different bases. We went down to Missouri, and from Missouri, we went down to Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas, and got to see a little bit of Mexico and back and the tournament, and it was nice. And you were with officers and enlistment, so it was just a team, And it was
So, and rank didn't make a difference?
no, there was no.
What mattered was
no.
that you could play volleyball.
Right. And matter of fact, Fred called taught me for me. I was always running and training, and we had a bet one time that he could beat me doing the parade field. Okay. I lost. He beat me. And he was not an athlete. He was smoking, and sitting on the couch all day. But
How did he manage to beat you?
I probably burned myself out right away, and he just took a nice slow pace, and so I had to bring him back a bottle of vodka from Mexico. Well, actually, it was tequila.
So you were on the volleyball team, and it sounds like you were pretty good at Offutt. Did you continue with sports?
Yes,
when you went to Spain?
Spain was limited. We had a basketball team. I played some basketball there, and that's about it. Offutt, I also had the chance to play soccer with. They had a detachment of RAF soldiers from England. It was part of NATO agreement, and I saw them playing there. I went over, asked them, and says, "Come on in." So we did the bases around us and some of the college. We played against Nebraska, South Dakota, and it was a nice experience, And especially with having learned English and then hearing the English accents, and they were a small group but very close knit and nice people to meet.
Wow. Is there anything else that you can recall from your military days that you'd like to tell me about?
No, that's about it, probably.
I think we've covered pretty much everything.
Yes.
Well, Stefan, I'd like to thank you for your service and
Okay.
thank you for the interview.
Okay. Thank you for having it.